number of names here, including Roger and Cedric Stein is also here, and Marcelo Teisler, who are the key, the core team behind the research. And it would not have been possible without people willing to fund this. It's an independent research, but with a lot of support. So, one slide about what we've done. So you have a kind of a background. So we've done a large-scale research in Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, starting in 2017, or 2016, I must say. And we went to 37 communities in Côte d'Ivoire and 37 in Ghana, and we interviewed around 3,000 households in these, together in these two countries. And we also did a large qualitative exercise. So all the farmers we interviewed in the survey were also in focus group discussions. So what I will present, results from that, may be good to know because data can start speaking for itself and can lead its own life. The data, when we collected the data, it was just before and during the price drop. So maybe if we would ask the questions today to the farmers, they might give different responses. So bear that in mind. And we also asked them often about the season 2015 and 16. Everything we will present, that is actually the good news, will be in the public domain. So there will be a database and a report coming soon. So we talk about the relative importance of cocoa in this presentation. And in our study, we made a distinction between cocoa households and non-cocoa households. Cocoa households meaning if you depend on cocoa, if you consider as a household, cocoa is your most or second most important crop. In Ghana, that was around 84% of the households. In Côte d'Ivoire, that was lower, around 63% of households. Particularly women in Côte d'Ivoire were more often than men not producing cocoa, so that explains partly the difference. So looking about what farmers think themselves, these are their own estimates about the importance of cocoa and the importance of other things they do, both food crops, other crops, but also non-farm activities. You see that for the cocoa, so if it says cocoa, it means a cocoa household. If not, it's another type of household. You see that the cocoa is significantly important. It's the largest income source for these farmers, but there are also already other things they earn a living with. And let us look a little bit closer what these other crops are. So these are like, just to give you a sense of, okay, so they produce other things. Is that one crop? Are these more crops? And what you see from our data is that it's already common that households produce more than one crop, as you can see. So in Ghana, for cocoa households, it was around 5, and for Côte d'Ivoire, a bit higher. You even see that cocoa households tend to produce more crops than households that do not depend on cocoa. You also see differences between Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, and that it can mainly be explained because of the land size. In Côte d'Ivoire, the land size is somewhat bigger. So what about these combinations? We were interested to see, like, so if you produce cocoa, what type of other crops do you also produce? So are there some patterns out there? So you see that we try to make it as clear as possible. We know it's maybe overwhelming slide, but if the color gets darker, it actually shows that, hey, there are combinations that we see. So, for example, for Ghana, if you look at cocoa, the patterns with cassava and plantain stand out, but you see that also households do other things. If then look at Côte d'Ivoire, what we are excited about, being researchers, I guess, is that you see in Côte d'Ivoire a very different picture, and actually less much of a pattern. Although if you look closely, you still see that cocoa is most often combined with plantain and cassava. And I think many of you already know why that is the case. So for this particular pairs that stand out. So let's say Ghana is of course the more, stands out more in Ghana than in Cote d'Ivoire. But if you look at why these patterns are actually there, well, most of you know that cocoa and cassava and plantain, they are often already intercropped on young cocoa farms. Plantain provides shade, but they also provide, of course, food. And that was also, if you ask the farmers why they choose for these different combinations and these different crops, the fact that they can produce plantain and cassava both for selling, for sales, for their income, and for food came up very strongly. And not only the additional income is appreciated, but also the timing and the regularity of that income. So most of you will know that cocoa comes in bulk, which is has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages, as there are periods where you just have less to spend. Also, if you look more at households, roles in the household, you also see that the crops make sense in combination in terms of complementarity of roles, also, although roles are not always that strict divided, I guess I should say. But for example, women are often known to take care of the young cocoa farm. So the first 2 years, the women are doing the cocoa farm and they are responsible for the intercropping and taking care of the food crops. But also if you look at cassava and plantain, for example, well, let's say cassava, while men do more the planting and the clearing of the land, women are more involved in the processing and in the trade. So also these crops, doing it as a household, makes in a way sense. When I presented these outcomes earlier, there was a kind of a desire from the audience to look at also other types of crops, because we know already quite a lot about plantain and cassava. So we just picked out some for both for Ghana and for Cote d'Ivoire, and this resembles what farmers have told us why they do certain things. And what really stand out that for farmers, here we talk about Ghana, cocoa is their most important crop. We have seen already that it's the largest part of their income, but they also stress this because it comes in a certain way, in bulk. It's stable, there's a guaranteed market. They also really appreciate, particularly in Ghana, the national importance of the crop. It's also a heritage. And they also value the fact that you can harvest it in 2 times. There are also a number of other benefits, will I not mention all out loud, but you get a picture of the importance of cocoa. If you compare it then with maize and with palm, you see that they see other benefits, but also reasons why they maybe favor cocoa and make the choice to have that as a more central crop. So for example, palm, particularly in the eastern region in Ghana, it's produced, but there the fact that the labor is very intense was really stressed. I have to run a bit, so I will take you through. So then maybe very interesting, if you would ask farmers comparing 5 years ago with today, we actually see that cocoa is the only crop that really has a 5% increase, and that people think it's more important instead of less. For Cote d'Ivoire, I try to do the same. To give you an idea, we talk a lot about rubber as well, but also about coffee if you're in Cote d'Ivoire setting. So also in Cote d'Ivoire, cocoa came up really as the best thing, the best crop, the highest price. It gives you the income you need. But I must say in Cote d'Ivoire, these were more the men than the women that emphasized this. And then if you look at rubber, it seems like a very promising crop. It's also already being produced, also more regional, we could say. But the fact that it takes 5 to 7 years to mature will make farmers think twice before they really start choosing for rubber instead of cocoa. So they also make already their choices on what combinations make sense, but also what may be more favorable crops in the future. So you see farmers are balancing like, they know what is happening, but they make the choice, and today they still choose for cocoa for a lot of good reasons. Also in Côte d'Ivoire, cocoa is still becoming more important, and cashew, interesting enough as well. These are the key messages. So this is the last slide. I have to finish this talk, but what I think really for us as researchers is important, that if we talk about diversification, we know we need to move beyond cocoa. But if you start at the farmers, you already see that they do a lot of things more than cocoa. But maybe the way they can do it can be more optimal. But we would really plea on the basis of what we've learned from our own study, let's not push farmers into any alternative if cocoa is actually the best alternative there is. So that is, let's be realistic and let's take what farmers do currently as a starting point and build on that for their future. I hope this was a good contribution. Thank you.